Good day everyone, my name is Stephen Redman and this is Pastor's Library. Pastor's Library is the channel where we discuss everything to do with Christian theology books that might be on a reading list for your seminary course, your bachelor's or master's degrees in theology or biblical studies, or just simply books that have piqued your interest because you've seen them somewhere else. Today we're going to talk particularly about a question that has been fired at me. If you have any comments, please leave them below. I really do value your comments. I will answer all of your comments in due course. And please remember to like what you see today. Remember to subscribe and to click on the bell, and that way you'll know when we release another episode. So, someone fired this question at me. They said, tell me about the oldest books in your library. Now, we all interpret things the way we want to, don't we? And I interpreted this the way that affects me. The honest truth is my library does not have many old books. But at this moment in time, I'm 64 years old. And so there are a number of books that I have bought in my lifetime, which to me are old. I do have some books that are modern reprints of old classics. I've got various versions of the Apostolic Fathers. I've got early reproductions of people like Clement and Ignatius and those people. I have also got Calvin's Institutes, and so there are lots of things that I could say I've got that are old, although the books themselves that they're in are fairly recent. But I am going to tell you about some books that are old to my collection and have a significance to me. And I'm going to start with one which is a testimony book by someone called Harry Greenwood. Harry Greenwood was a very significant man in the charismatic renewal in the 60s in particular and the 70s. I never actually heard him speak live, but I did buy this book. Now, this book is still available, and yesterday it was £7.40 on Amazon, and it's also available as a Kindle download. And this book was published in 1978. I went to university in 1977, so in 78 I was 19. And I bought this book when it first came out. You can see this book's in pretty good condition. I have read this book over and over, which always is just a reminder to the rest of you that even paperbacks can be looked after. This book had a massive impact on me. I was brought up in a classical Pentecostal church. What do I mean by classical? What I mean is we were taught and believed the ethos of the Pentecostal theology. We were taught particular things, but whether we actually ever saw them in practice was another kettle of fish. Our services were hymn prayer sandwiches, much as they might be in most Methodist churches today. I'm just giving you this as a background. And I did hear Derek Prince speak around this same time. And he said that he toured universities all over the world speaking apologetically. He found one significant thing. He found frustration amongst the Pentecostal young people. And he said he believes the reason is this. He said, you can go to a lot of churches, we're talking about the late 70s now, and you may well be satisfied with what you hear. But the Pentecostal young people are going mainly to churches where they hear all about the good news of Jesus. They hear all about the gifts of the Holy Spirit. They hear all about miracles and signs and wonders, but they don't see any of it. And that really hit me. It hit me as if someone had thumped me in the guts. And I recognised that this was exactly who I was. I knew it all. I could tell you exactly every verse in Acts chapter 2. I could talk to you about the Pentecostal experience, but had I really experienced it? And it was when I went to university that for me, the heavens opened and I had a great time with God, and that time has never stopped. Although I did meet Jesus when I was only 8 years old, and he has never left me. So we're talking about a book here, but I haven't really mentioned it, have I? What happened with this book was I read it, and in it there's this fabulous story of the author preaching a tent mission, I think, in a particular town, and ready to leave town, and he's absolutely famished, he's no money, and he was walking along the street, and God said to him, you see that restaurant there? Go in and have a meal on me. And when I read that, I thought, I've never heard anybody say God said anything like that. And as you read the story, you find that he has a fantastic slap-up meal. As he gets to the dessert course, he starts to eat more slowly. I think he had a second cup of coffee as well at the end. And when he gets up to pay, which in this particular restaurant, there was a section where you stood over and handed in your bill and paid, he realises that he has no means of paying at all. And somebody just comes up to him and says, Pastor Greenwood, just want to pay this for you. And he says, oh, no, I insist, which is a big act of faith, because if this guy doesn't pay for him, he doesn't know what he's going to do. And the guy says, no, I'm paying. And he thanks him, shakes his hand and walks out and rejoices that God did let him have a meal on him. Now, you've got to say, how life-changing is this? It's not about salvation, is it? It's about a provision in the moment. It's about a little touch for a preacher who has just preached up a storm in the town and is going home with nothing. Well, all I can say is that changed my outlook. And I had two incredibly significant moments in my life as a direct result from reading this. And God spoke to me in a very, very similar way. All I can say about this book is I don't know about the theology of it. I really don't. I never met the man. I hope nobody ever tells me there was anything awful about him, because I don't know that there was. But I do know this book changed my life, and I thank God for it. So this has been in my collection since I was 19 years old, and you can still buy it for £7.40. About the same time, I was introduced to Frank Foglio and a book called Hey God. Now, this isn't my original one, because my original one, I used to do what lots of people do, is if you asked me to borrow a book, I would lend it to you, and of course I never ever saw it again. Well, now I have a reference library. No books go out the door. And if that sounds harsh, then I'm sorry. But I can always come in here and find the book I want and work on it. And this, for me, is a resource for my ministry. So that's why I have it that way. But this is another one of these tremendous stories of men of faith, in this case of Frank's mother. They lived in abject poverty in America. I think this was sort of depression time. She had a little bit of spaghetti, a little bit of spaghetti sauce, and a husband came home with work and brought his entire crew with him. And Frank says, as a little boy, he remembers his mother being stood in the kitchen saying, hey, God, you better do something with this spaghetti sauce. That husband of mine, he's brought all these people home. I have all these people to feed, and there's only enough here for me, you, and the kid. Of course, this spaghetti went on all night, and there was an absolute miracle. And I suppose it was the poverty that he grew up in, which was very similar in some ways to the poverty that I grew up in. And the experience of God when he needed it, which I have to say, I also have experienced God when I needed him. And the times when, as a pastor, in a good, strong church in the city of York in the 21st century. I am very grateful for the generosity of our folk. I have no needs. But there have been times in my life and in my ministry when I have had needs. And God has provided wonderfully and amazingly. And this book, Hey God, is also a great one to read. You can still get this on Amazon Kindle. You can also get this new copy, which I haven't had this latest copy for long, £17.99. So it is still available. Okay, Donald G is a name that means an awful lot to me, having grown up in Pentecostal circles. By the time I was born again at age 8, he was already dead. But I have heard tapes of him. Tapes, those are little bits of magnetic particles on a piece of plastic that go through capstans and go past a magnetic reading head. You've probably only seen them in history books, but they are real. I've heard him speak, and I've read the texts of some of his sermons, and I've also read, I think, everything that's out there that he's written. He was a very profound leader in the early Pentecostal movement, and the man who predominantly made ecumenism work with Pentecostals in the 20th century in the UK. He was also an international speaker as well, which in those days was a big deal. So there are two books here. My favourite book of his, which is Trophimus I Left Sick, which is a quote from the King James Version, Trophimus I Left Sick at Miletus. It's about the problems with divine healing. It's about what happens when people don't get healed. And I have to say to you, this is a very bold thing for an early Pentecostal preacher to actually respond to and talk about. And this book is only 30 pages long. But when I bought this, which is probably about 10 years ago, I paid £35 for it. I remember looking at 30 pages and thinking, should I be paying more than £1 a page? But as of today, bookfinder.com says there isn't a copy in the world at any price for sale. But Trophimus I Left Sick is a fantastic piece, something which is quoted by author after author in books on healing. And I commend that to you. I'm not letting that one go. The other one, which I think is the oldest book I have by him, this one was published in 1940, and it's called This is the Will of God, and its subtitle is The Bible and Sexual Problems. Now, as a pastor, I have people come to me regularly with sexual problems, and I have to say to you, I have got probably 40 or 50 books in my library that deal with sexual matters. I find all of them helpful, but this simply is up there with the very, very best available today. And as of yesterday, you could buy a used copy of this for £13, which will probably be in the same condition as mine. This book says I paid 10 pence for it, but I didn't. I paid a lot more than that. That might be the price ticket though. It's a 53-page book telling early Pentecostal pastors how they should behave and talking to them about self-control, talking about church discipline and stuff like that. And I cannot recommend this enough. An absolutely excellent volume. I now just want to deal with one last book. And that book is the first edition of God's Strategy in Human History by Roger T. Forster and Paul Marston. Now, I think I bought this in 1974. It was printed in 1973. So I was at school when I bought this, and I read it cover to cover, And I just remember my feeling at the time was, I like this guy. I think what he says is really good. God's Strategy in Human History deals with some of the real nutty problems of the Christian faith. In the foreword to this version, written by F.F. Bruce, he particularly recommends it to us. Now, there was a second edition of this, and I have in my hands here the third edition. The third edition was published, in the last decade, 2013. So 10 years old. And what he's done over the years is turned it into 2 volumes, one dealing with all the issues and one going into depth on the issues. And I recommend that you buy the 2 together. Because Roger Forster has seen to it, and he's still around, he's in his early 90s, but he's still around, he has seen to it that his books are available as cheaply as possible. I think you can probably pick up the pair for about £20 plus postage and packing, which is incredibly good value. But what I would say to you is these books cut through the rubbish. They cut through some of the big lies of Christianity, things like determinism, that your husband died because God snuck up behind you and he coshed him over the back of the head. It's taken him to a glorious place, but you've got to suffer. It's taken away all of that sort of concept that the book of Job was written to demolish, to try and get rid of this idea of punitive retribution. But I have to commend this highly to you. What I would say to you is I have the first edition. I wouldn't go looking for the first edition now. I would go looking for the third edition because it's much better. It's incredibly good. And of all the books that I have ever read as a Christian, I would say to you, this pair are right up there. And I really commend them to you. So, though that pair of books is only 10 years old, but the original is 50, I suppose. I would say to you that these books that I've shown you today are significant to me, mainly because I can remember life changes that came about through reading them. Only because they made the Bible more real to me and they explained the Bible to me. And these days my penchant might be for more academic reading, might be for more technical reading. But that doesn't mean these old books haven't got a huge value to me, because they have. I hope that's helped you. I hope it's sparked a few ideas. I'd be interested to know books that have had a similar impact on you. And if you have any comments to make, leave them below. Remember to like, remember to subscribe, remember to click on the bell. And until next time, I will say bye.